Even among Destiny fans, few will argue that the lack of 60 frames per second for Destiny 2 is a bit of a bummer. While the PC version will support 60 frames per second if your hardware can handle it, those who want to play this game on consoles, which is a significant amount of people, are out of luck. Which is a bit of a shame because this is one of those features that many assumed would be a given for Destiny's sequel. Now, Bungie did provide an explanation for why the game doesn't run at 60 frames per second. The following information comes from Edge Magazine issue 310, the information of which was relayed by website WCCF Tech. During an interview with Edge, executive producer Mark Noseworthy provided a thorough explanation of Destiny 2's frame rate cap. Here's what he said. It's about the simulation of the Destiny world. 30 AI at once, large open spaces, 6 players, sometimes with vehicles, and dropships coming in. That's where we're using the CPU. Could we make a Destiny game that ran at 60 frames per second? Yes, but the space would be smaller, it would be less cooperative, and there would be fewer monsters to shoot. That's not the game we want to make. First and foremost, we're trying to make an incredible action game. We don't feel we have been held back by the choices we have made about world simulation versus frame rate. In fact, we think we're offering a player experience you can't have elsewhere because of the choices we're making. But if frame rate is something that's really important to you, there is a platform now where you can spend as much money as you want, to go as fast as you want. That last bit kind of reminded me of Don Matrick.
Fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right. I get what Bungie's saying, but the fact of the matter is that not everyone has a powerful PC. That's why home consoles are popular. As far as gaming goes, they are cheaper, easier to manage, and a more convenient option for those who aren't all that tech savvy. But okay, I get it. As far as consoles go, Bungie says that the lower frame rate is mainly due to the CPU, which is a valid argument. While both the PS4 and Xbox One made significant strides in the GPU department, when it comes to CPU, unfortunately, that has remained relatively the same. That's because unlike GPU, a console CPU can't be upgraded. You can't just switch the old one out and pop the new one in. Not in a closed architecture like this. If you did that, the current library of games just wouldn't be compatible with a console anymore. So all home consoles can do as far as upgrading CPU goes is increase the clock speed. Basically make the brain work a little faster, but not to the point where it'll overheat. But that's about it. What this means is that while the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X can push a lot more pixels now, they are still bottlenecked when it comes to things like CPU-intensive elements such as physics and AI. So yeah, it is entirely possible that for the type of game that Bungie's trying to make with Destiny 2, they couldn't hit the 60 FPS mark without making significant compromises in important CPU-intensive areas. And it kind of makes sense when you consider just how much bigger Destiny 2 is compared to the first game in terms of volume, at least where PvE is concerned. But here's what I don't understand. While all this perfectly explains why PvE is locked at 30 frames per second with its expansive environment sprinkled with large numbers of enemies and AI characters, why is it that PvP, or Crucible as it's known in Destiny, can't be freed up to run at a smooth 60 FPS? Keep in mind that unlike PvE, Destiny's PvP takes place in relatively small maps, there is no AI involved, and there's only 8 players, 4 versus 4, which by the way is less than Destiny 1's 12 players, or 6 versus 6. So with so much processing resource freed up in Crucible, why not make it so that the game switches to 60 FPS in that mode? This technique isn't unheard of, I might add. A perfect example of a game that does this is Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. In the large-scale, graphically intensive single-player mode where cinematic presentation and expansive environments are more of a priority than twitch reactions and precision, it runs at 30 frames per second, while in the smaller scale, less graphically intensive multiplayer mode where twitch reactions and precision are vital, it runs at 60 frames per second. The game smartly adjusts the frame rate to something appropriate for a given situation, and I feel like the console versions of Destiny 2 would greatly benefit from something like this. Make the more cooperative, less precision-intensive, CPU-heavy PvE mode 30 FPS, and give the competitive, precision-intensive, less CPU-heavy PvP mode the vital 60 FPS. Granted, for some people, it can be jarring to go back and forth between one frame rate and another, but at least I think think players should be given the option to enable such a feature. Those who find the transition a little too jarring can stick to 30 frames per second all across the board, while those who don't mind the transition and are really competitive can activate 60 frames per second on Crucible. Perhaps something like that would be the ideal solution. All I know is that I think there is a way to implement 60 FPS in Crucible, but Bungie isn't doing that for whatever reason. I think maybe they want to keep the experience consistent throughout. As a result, the bottom line is that if you want 60 FPS, get Destiny 2 on PC and make sure your computer can handle the frame rate. Otherwise, you're stuck with 30 FPS on consoles due to CPU constraints and Bungie's decision to not implement varying frame rates for different modes. While I don't think that this is what will make or break the game by any means, it's still a less than ideal situation. That's just my opinion though. How important do you think frame rate will be for Destiny 2? And what would be your ideal solution to this situation? Let us know in the comments below. Also, if you enjoy my content, I hope you'll consider supporting me on Patreon to help our community remain independent from third-party sponsorship and corporate interference. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out!